AI didn't just change how fast engineers can code now, but it essentially broke the contract between engineering and product. That's because we're producing code so much faster now that I know you're all lamenting about how much code review is becoming the bottleneck. But we have to understand the even bigger problem, which is how can we even expect product to keep up with what's happening? No matter what you're seeing, now the engineers are moving that much faster. At the end, we're going to reach the next bottleneck if you haven't reached it yet. And that is where your people, your engineers, will have to be okay with some product proliferation. Things are going to have to be moving to them in order to maintain this fast pace. And those who won't learn how to do that are going to lose out on all the benefits we are here to enjoy. This week's video is entirely about that, how we can understand the difference that's going to be happening in what product work was before and how engineers need to step up right now. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive coach and consultant. I help people just like you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead a mediocre team. And, well, if you don't want to lead a mediocre team, this week, when we're talking exactly about this, it might not be that obvious, because you might be feeling, okay, the team is moving that much faster, and if only we could review all that code, we'd be doing amazingly well. But at the end of the day, your team moving 3, 5, or some people claim 10 times faster, if they're doing that, it means that they're making that much more progress, that faster. They require to make, I don't know how many more product decisions every day. How can we expect those poor product managers to even keep up? Let's tackle that. So let's tackle the simple math first. When engineers are moving 5 times faster, it naturally means that the product has to move 5 times faster, right? But some things are not that easily laid out. First of all, we as engineers might have gotten a big boost, but it's not the same boost that PMs are seeing, and therefore they are not able to operate as fast as your engineers might be able to do right now. Second, frankly, I think that probably 80% or even more of the companies I've worked with, small startups and mature companies, have almost always had the same problem and that is that engineers were lamenting that product can't keep up anyway. So surely now it's not going to be getting any easier. And let's add to that the fact that some product work is product work that just requires some wall time. It requires some actual time to pass. It's not that if we can automate engineering, we can automate a lot of the product work. Sometimes we have to go and have conversations with clients. We have to wait and see what happens when a certain fix or a certain feature ends up in people's hands. So it's not like product can work 5 times faster now, just magically. And therefore, once you handle whatever code review bottleneck you've got, you're going to end up getting where product will become your new bottleneck if you're not there yet again. So we want to ensure that we prevent that by taking on as much as possible of product hands off their plates, so we can keep moving faster and create the right sort of, people are saying AI engineers, right? What we need are senior engineers who have enough of, broad shoulders that others in the company can rely on them to take on whatever's needed and push forward where they can, and not just sit there on their hands and wait for someone to chew up another specced out feature for them to move forward. Now, the old model that, again, for many companies didn't work well was the model where you would expect some perfect specced out feature with all the edge cases, all the screens, everything's already perfectly clear, and then you move forward. Now, I will say that while many engineers would complain about not having that as the bar they were expecting, I like for years, and I think that was the right attitude. Why? Because I thought that engineers can be like adults and not have to have everything chewed up for them before they can start working on it. And I saw how for many companies already product were not keeping up, and therefore if we didn't have to have them decide every minute detail, why make them? Why not assume that we as engineers have the capacity to do some critical thinking by ourselves as well? Just because it's not in a programming language does not mean that your team does not have the capacity to make that sort of decision, or at least make the case for a certain decision and see if they get any pushback. Whatever you're thinking about that old model, that model, no matter what, can no longer exist right now, because when engineers are moving that much faster, unless you're willing to 2x or 3x your product management team, you're never going to see that keep up. And that means we have to change how we view our role and what we expect to get from product, what we expect product to do. This, of course, is something that's still changing, still will undergo a lot of changes, because I am sure that product will also get a considerable improvement in how things are done over there. But the state of the industry right now is that things are moving much faster on the engineering side. And therefore, at least for the foreseeable future, we have to start changing things up in order to maintain this rhythm or unlock even better results. So let's talk about what senior means. I will say my definition of senior might have been different all along, but for many people, a senior engineer, people moving on to senior, principal, whatever, was solely about their technical capacity and maybe a bit about operating with the team. But frankly, now, becoming more senior is not just about that. It's about having a wider understanding, not solely of the technology, not solely of the product, but of everything that's happening around you. So think about why something is prioritized, what clients are actually expecting to see, reading what clients are doing. I have entire videos about product mastery, but we have to have that capacity, at least somewhat, within the engineering team. A senior engineer now needs to understand this context enough to be able to make rapid decisions, at least these smaller decisions. I'm not saying that they have to spec out entire features by themselves, but it should be so that product can create a much looser backlog where they define in grand, in the grander scheme of things, what we want to do with broad strokes, and engineers should be able to take that and start massaging that into something more concrete. Yeah, they can have the back and forth then, they can have some sparring or pair producting with product later, but they cannot expect to have everything clearly set out from the outset. They will have to be doing the thinking about the edge cases, about the trade-offs, about what makes sense, where we can cut corners and where we should be digging deeper. They can come up with their own approaches about how to solve something because they have better understanding of the product or parts of it, of the technology that's related, and maybe come up with interesting things. The truth is that a lot of times your team now will have a much better understanding of the product than the product people themselves, because things will move that much faster. If you're telling me that your engineers within the same team cannot keep up with what others are doing, how can you expect a PM, a poor PM, to keep up with what the entire team's doing? And therefore, we have to expect from our seniors to step up and realize that senior now is not just, again, amazing code or producing code fast. It's about understanding what's happening all around. It's about the proliferation of product across company bounds, from product towards engineering. So we have to understand a bit more about what's happening there and not see that as a hassle, but understand that this is actually how we're going to be unlocking the next evolution here, where every engineer is going to get so much more impact, so much more freedom, ownership about what's possible, because they have this understanding, because they wield this set of skills that allows them to move that much faster and provide that much more value. What does this look like in practice? Here are a few guiding principles that I've seen working with my clients. First of all, you need to deliberately tell your people what you expect of them. So deliberately tell them you are no longer expected to only work on fully specced out features, you have also the responsibility now of taking these half-baked things from the backlog and start working on them with a product counterpart, sure, but you now have that responsibility. You now have that ownership over a feature, especially if you're a senior or higher engineer in the company. Second, it means that we have to create these streams of communication that are always ongoing, always back and forth. Some companies still have the mindset of handoffs, of things moving sort of like waterfall, even if we pretend it's not, where things are laid out, then engineers work on it, then we send it to product to review, etc. But given that things now are with these vague gray borders between the organizations, we have to have a lot more back and forth and healthier. We have to learn how to communicate effectively, how we can show product that we're chewing something and want them to tell us whether we understood it correctly, etc. Yes, some automation can really help there, and we can have some AI helping us in between. But at the end of the day, this is based on healthy communication between product and engineers. And that means that your engineers need not shy away from communicating with people outside of the tech organization in a manner that's not just tech focused. I don't want them to only be focusing on the trade-offs of selecting this path or that path when it comes to DB load or how much longer it's going to take to implement something, but also from the point of view of another person there helping their fellow product managers think about what makes sense, what we might be able to get here, what the opportunity here is, etc. Third, your team should feel free to make the call. A lot of the time now we have these decisions that we might have been used to waiting for product to decide, but now we can just make the call. Make the call and surface it if needed, but at least start moving forward. A lot of the time now, it will make much more sense to just say, here's what we're seeing, here's what makes sense for us, let us know if we're wrong, and getting to work as opposed to just keeping up with raising tons and tons of questions and only waiting for all the answers. No one has all the answers, and your team's take just might be as good or even better than product for many of the things. Not all of them, of course, but I want teams to start taking on the initiative, start pushing forward. And lastly, your team needs to be really good at understanding what's reversible and irreversible. Most of the decisions that are easily reversible should be sitting with them. They need to be moving forward fast, not all over analyzing things, but just starting to make progress when we realize that we're in front of something that's irreversible or that's a lot more expensive to reverse, something that is really high stakes. That's when we need to learn how to have that escalation, how to pull in those people from product, but most of the time just move forward. Life's too short to keep on waiting for people to tell you what to do. Lastly, there's a mindset shift here. I know that a lot of people who are very bright engineers were used to being confined to the engineering part of the organization. And maybe that was easiest. Maybe that's how they felt like they were doing things really good. That's how they shine. But sorry, that's no longer the case. You cannot expect to do that. This mindset shift, which again goes back to what I said at the beginning, the explicit, deliberate expectation setting that you're going to be doing with your team is crucial. Your team has to understand what's going to be different, has to understand what you expect them to do, and only by doing that will you see them starting to actually thrive, starting to take this extreme ownership on and moving forward faster. And those who will not make that mindset shift will not make it in today's organizations. I see it all over the place. Literally yesterday I was talking to a client about one of their best engineers who was just not cutting it because he was still trying to do things the old way, and that no longer made sense in how that organization was moving. People need to start making these personal upgrades to keep up. I know sometimes it's not nice when people move your cheese, but it has already moved. It's no longer there, so just complaining about that is not gonna make things any better. So the challenge for you this week is to think about where is your team still reaching out for product unnecessarily. Spot those people who are complaining about what product is not doing fast enough and see where you can have people step up and start taking on those responsibilities. Do it this week and you'll see changes emerging real fast. You'll see people starting to make progress, and hopefully you'll see your senior engineers becoming genuine seniors, people you can really trust on when it comes to moving forward much faster. That's it for this week. As always, if you have any questions or comments, if you think everything here is stupid, let me know in the comments or in my email that's in the video description. I really appreciate all the feedback. If you like this, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And I'll see you here in the next video. Ciao.